Another job on Warren's engine mount. So we've obviously lowered the engine, and that means that the front and rear engine mounts can't be used. For the two side ones, we have just spaced them down, basically put spacers in between. On the rear and the front, it's not as simple as that. And the whole idea was to actually kind of fabricate a whole new rear engine mount. Having looked at it again, I think there's a good chance we might be able to do something with this. The engine has been lowered basically an inch. And as I kind of look at this, I'm not sure if I was to cut an inch off here so that it would sit like an inch lower, whether A, it would be strong enough, which we could beef it up, or B, it would actually fit, because it's got a kind of, I haven't looked, it's got a cutout, obviously goes over like the steering rack, but I haven't actually looked, so I'm just going to basically throw it on now and see if we could actually just chop this engine mount down, because that would be a lot easier. And it would give us something, again, it's nice to keep standard parts where you can. So we've got a bit of space, not loads, but we have got a bit. The other thing I'm not 100% sure of is we rotated the engine angle a little bit, and we did that to make the drive shaft sit a bit straighter. As we drop the engine down, obviously the kind of angle of the drive shaft starts to dip down a bit. But if you rotate the engine back or forwards, that drive shaft angle then straightens out again. Obviously at the disadvantage of having the angles at the drive shafts at an angle forward or backward, but it's actually not as much because of how angles and stuff work. But yeah, it looks like we probably wouldn't have enough room if we chop more out of that. But the other question is, could we then actually chop more out of here? Now you're getting quite quickly into the realms of, by the time you chop that off and then you chop more out of there, it's quicker just to make something new, and it potentially is. But doing it this way, like on the car with the original mount, if the bolt holes line up, we're going to throw this away anyway, it's not worth anything. If all the holes line up due to engine rotation, if they do line up, it actually gives us something to kind of pattern off. I can then fabricate it all on the bench rather than on the car, which should be a bit easier. I'm not 100% sure yet. I'm kind of thinking out loud. This is the first time I've really looked at the job. So I think I'm going to have a measure up, maybe cut some of it out on the bandsaw, see if it fits on. If it doesn't, I'm not going to waste too much time trying to modify this part, basically. If it looks like it's not going to fit fairly quickly, I'll just move on to fabricating something. I've cut it down, doesn't look pretty. I'd be able to beef up quite a lot of that anyway. I'd probably add in a bit of material at the top. But I kind of want to know just if the holes are going to line up. If the holes don't line up, we need to scrap it and start again anyway, because again the engine rotation might have kind of messed it all up. So I'll just pop that back in. Obviously it'll sit a lot further down than it did before now, and doesn't look as if it's going to line up. The engine has got a bit of rotation further forward, so I think given that, what we're going to be better off doing is just fabricating something. It's going to be the best way. I think we can probably make something that's just as strong and has, yeah, like a bit of adjustability in it as well. Thinking about it, I'm almost wondering if the front mount just goes off 2 bolts. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to trace this bolt pattern onto a piece of steel. I'm probably going to put a 3rd hole in it, which will be for a rose joint, and then we'll have rose joint to rose joint with a piece of threaded bar in the middle, or probably like a jack screw or something like that. And yeah, that's how we'll be able to just fine tune it to get it right then. So I've cut a big piece of plate, it's like 10mm flat. I've kind of roughly put the holes in it. I'll obviously measure them before we go ahead and do it. But that'll bolt up there, something like that, flat against the diff casing. And then we'll have another hole like up here, which will have a rose joint coming off it, off to the thread of the engine mount. So the thread of the engine mount just sticks straight up. So we can just literally put a rose joint straight on top of there, coming straight off. So with either a piece of threaded bar or a jack screw in there, so you can actually kind of adjust it if you need to. It'll make it easier for getting it off as well. And yeah, we just probably have to get some bolts to go in there. Might be able to cut the original ones down, I'm not sure if they're threaded all the way down or not. But if we can, we will. Yeah, drill these holes out. I'm going to need to take a piece of material out there, which I actually might use to kind of strengthen it with. I think it'll be strong enough. I mean, it's like 10mm steel plate, but we're going to cut that off there, so I might actually weld it back on. Maybe, we'll see. But yeah, if I just get those holes drilled and cut that piece off first, then I can think about yeah, where I need to put my hole in the top to line up with the rose joint that I'm going to put onto the engine, onto the subframe mount. So what I've got is a piece of plate that I've cut, and that'll sit on the side of the diff casing there. And then I've also got 2 rose joints. Now, I would rather do this with like a jack screw in the middle, or one of these being a left-hand thread, one of these being a right-hand thread, so then you could kind of adjust them and it would get narrower or wider. But we haven't got that. I haven't got any of those to hand, and it's not, realistically, it's not going to make that much difference. You're not like you're ever going to really need to adjust it other than when you first fit it. So these will definitely do for now. Yeah, I mean, again, it's one of them. Could be better, but we're just using what we've got just to get the job done. So they're going to be about the right length, just like that. So what I'll do is I'll bevel them, and then we'll weld them up. Might put a piece of tube over, I don't know. It just depends how I feel at the time, I guess. Piece of tube might look a bit neater, but it just gets heavier, and it's not really going to make it that much stronger for what we're using it for. So with that piece of plate mounted there, like that, we'll have a hole in the top of it, and that hole will mount that. So that'll sit up there like that with a hole in it, shooting off to the mount on the back of the subframe, which the other rose joint will slip down onto. And we'll just put our nut on the top there. Luckily I've got the right size internals on these reducers, and yeah, that'll fit just like that, and that'll work perfectly. Really, that's as much as we really need. So I'm going to, I've already pop the hole centers for the diff casing. I'm just going to drill them out. I'm going to clean all this plate up after, get all the critical dimensions in there first, and then yeah, I'll bolt it on, figure out where exactly I'm going to put my hole. Like, I want to get the height right. The length obviously doesn't matter too much. I'd rather have, I guess, less plate, because the thread is in there anyway. So if I have to thread it out a bit more, it doesn't matter. But I can't get rid of the weight of that thread. So thinking about it in, like, you know, kind of weight terms, the smaller the plate is, the better. So yeah, I'll then get that hole in at the right height, clean it all up, and yeah, another job ticked off. Got some holes drilled in my plate, and I've got the original bolts. Obviously these are going to be too long. We can get some others or cut them down or whatever's going to work. But I'm just going to put that bottom one in there for now, and then thread it into the diff casing just to get it kind of lined up. I don't need it to be bang on at the minute. I'm just going to look whereabouts to put my other hole, basically. So I just want to make sure that the plate is sitting where it's going to sit. It's a bit tight, put this in. square on that. So I've got my one rose joint sticking up from the top of the Fabricating engine mount there, and then basically the other one is going to go there. So I think what I'll do is we've got plenty of room behind there, so I'll extend that out a bit just so it gives me a bit of adjustability in and out. I mean, I don't think we'll need it, but better to have it and not need it than not have it and need it. And then I'm pretty much just gonna, with that as square as I can, well, that is pretty square off the top of that engine mount at that, with no spacer or anything under. Don't think we'll need a spacer. At that there, that's the correct height roughly. So I'm just gonna mark there to put my hole in. So yeah, I just need to put a hole in there now for this. Weld these two rose joints up, weld the two fittings together, and then basically just round off this whole plate, make it kind of nice, and take out any weight that we don't need. Basically, there's no point in having it any bigger than it needs to be. So yeah, we'll trim all that down now and just getting it fitted then. Got the plate all cleaned up now, nicely rounded off. Found some bolts and got them cut down to the right length. Yeah, that should be fine. So it's just a case of getting that bolted on now. Hopefully it bolts on nice and easy. Cut down bolts are always there's a bit of a knack to doing it, to getting the thread right. Got that wedged in there somewhere. Yeah, this is pretty stout, this engine mount. I don't think it's going to break. I think before this breaks you'll be... Oh, I've got some washers. Oh, did I forget about my washers? Never forget a washer. And I've got this that's been welded up. It's still a bit hot. So we'll just wind that pretty much all the way in. Oh, there goes the other one. So we've also got the mount welded up as well. So we'll just pop that on. Again, it's just going over the Fabricating mount at the back. So we've still got a rubber bushing in it. It's not full race car. Generally, if you're getting into the realms of solid engine mounts, you end up with other problems. You end up breaking things really easily. There's no giving anything. And then that will just pop through there. Again, I've got like an OEM bolt on there. I think that'll be fine. Tighten up the lock nut. And we're all sorted. There we go. It's nice and tight. We've got a bit of movement in there, which is good. All bolts are tight. That's it. One more job ticked off the list. So yeah, on to the next thing.